Some of them didn't even stay at the Trump Hotel. They just rented rooms at the Trump Hotel so that Donald Trump would know that they were staying in his hotel. And word on the street was from some people who were inside the White House that Trump would review the hotel logs to see who was staying there. So if you had a meeting with Donald Trump, he would just check to see whether or not you stayed at the hotel before he, had the meeting with you. And I guess that was your tip to the bartender to make sure you got the cocktail that you wanted at the Trump White House.
In watching the news, I'm fascinated by the fact that these already wealthy individuals paid $300,000 a seat to attend a cryptocurrency people dinner with Donald Trump. And none of them seem to feel like they got their money's worth, which, number one, the fact that you think you can just pay, get access to a president, and get what you want is part of the problem with America right now. But this one guy was like, yeah, it was a Walmart steak that I got fed. I didn't get any time with the president. And all of the cryptocurrencies that they're talking about are not real and bound to fail anyway. So much for $300,000.
Yeah, the object of this entire lesson for us is that we have a president of the United States who is willing to do anything to take money from anybody. I think just as sort of entry stakes into the governing process, right? It's not like, I always think of it, it's not like you're going to actually get what you want. It's like you just got to pay to get your seat at the table, right? They're just it's like paying the doorman to get into a nightclub, right? You still got to pay your bar bill. You just got to pay that guy to get in. And that's a lot like what the Trump administration and Trump family are setting their business enterprises up like. So what they've done is they've created a meme coin, which is basically like something that doesn't really have any value. It doesn't do anything in particular.
And it's not an actual coin that I can touch and feel, right? This is all digital.
Right. It's all digital. It's just it's $ Trump coin, right? And so people invest in this coin. They put money in. Invest is a very loose term. But people put money into this coin. And frankly, the people who started the coin get to take the money, right? It's literally like handing money over to the Trump family. And so we are finding all these foreign investors are putting money into this quote unquote coin, this online digital currency. It's not like Bitcoin, which you can use to trade and, you've got some value to it and you can buy things. It's not that. It's just Trump's meme. And so we see these things pop up from time to time. What's happening, though, now is if you're a foreign government actor, you can put money into this as a way to give money to Donald Trump. And so remember in the last administration, we had the Trump Hotel in Washington, D.C., and all these people went to the Trump Hotel. Some of them didn't even stay at the Trump Hotel. They just rented rooms at the Trump Hotel so that Donald Trump would know that they were staying in his hotel. And word on the street was from some people who were inside the White House that Trump would review the hotel logs to see who was staying there. So if you had a meeting with Donald Trump, he would just check to see whether or not you stayed at the hotel before he, had the meeting with you. And I guess that was your tip to the bartender to make sure you got the cocktail that you wanted at the Trump White House.
This meme coin is hilarious. And really to break it down even further, it's, they created a legal entity that can accept money, and they put this idea of a coin on it, even though no one's accepting this currency, right? You can't really buy anything with this coin. It just currently exists. They're getting investors. And at no point does Trump actually have to prove that this coin is usable or has any value. It's just, here's a bank account. Here's a way you can send me money. And it's all under this cover of this meme coin, pay to play. This is all pay to play. And the challenge is that, clubs are exclusive and clubs are, you have to look and dress a certain way. Government is supposed to be for people. Government services, like go create a meme coin and do things on your own. Fine. Not as president of the United States. There's like real things we have to deal with right now. One of those real things, and I harp on this, Jamal, that as we get rid of these inspectors and safety and all these regulations that kept our food and medicine safe, we now have a kid who was in the hospital because of salmonella poisoning that was traced back to the cases of salmonella from last year. That actually people knew about because USDA was telling people they were doing the inspections. They were telling people, we were hearing it in the news of like, oh, don't eat this, lettuce or this cucumber for a while. Kid is hospitalized and no one had any idea that there's been contaminated food back out in the system again. Like maybe that's what people should be paying attention on while they're in government, not using the spot to make more money for themselves.
I thought we were making America healthy again. Wasn't that one of the taglines out of RFK Jr., the health secretary, who says, "Don't look to me for health advice," or whatever it was he said.
Mm-hmm.
But listen, I think the question for us as we sort through all of this is, what does it really mean when you take the exceptionalism cloak off of American action? There was some part of us that liked to believe in this idea that America was a different kind of place and we didn't do things the way everybody else in the world did. And here's a place where you can
Mm-hmm.
come and stake your claim and get ahead of the game, and you make your money and you'd be fine. But also the greed was certainly there, but there were rules of the road, and everybody would play by the rules of the road, and it would all work out over time. And sometimes people would get caught for doing bad things, but they were just individual actors. But what happens when that just becomes the system and you take away this cloak of
Mm-hmm.
exceptionalism and it's just everybody pays to play, and this is just the world that we all live in?
Well, part of why
I
when
think it's a
this
very
is what
dangerous place.
Oh yeah, I mean this is there's many countries in the world, and most of them we would call developing countries, or we'd call them dictatorships, where it is just about the power and the power of your money and power of your control over other people. And it's elections are a joke; they don't really matter in those places, and the rich get richer, and everybody else just tries to figure out how to make things work without getting in trouble. I will say though that storyline about America, I think part of what Trump's success is he stopped pretending that story was true. And there's plenty of people who said, listen, you got to have money to get ahead. That's how this really works. And I'm going to help you come along with me and figure this out. Now, is there a massive grift for him? Absolutely. But when Democrats have stuck to the idealism instead of talking about the very real challenges that are being faced by the current generations, right? By millennials, by Gen Z, the fact that we can't afford to buy a house and boomers were able to do that. And that's been the disconnect, right? Constantly talking about democracy and its ideals and not talking about the very, very real things that we've experienced over decades, right? Like people want to hear the truth. They want to know that you understand their experience. Trump was able to say he understood the experience of many people. He told them that the answer was racism and more tribalism. That's what he told them was the answer. But it started with acknowledging the reality, which is that our system has been broken for quite some time.
But you've done a lot of work around the world. One of the things that makes America work as an international entity is that people do
Yeah.
believe this idea of
Yes.
America being kind of a different place. And so it's not just China or Russia or one of these
Mm-hmm.
places where you do have to pay, or they are just trying to get as much out of you as they can for as long as they can. America is supposed to be a place where, like, yeah, of course Americans are self-interested, but they also are going to try to make sure you get what you need out of the deal. And like, there's going to be access for everybody else. We're going to police the seas of the South China Sea, and we're
Mm-hmm.
going to let people, all the ships get to travel freely, through the sea lanes that we police. But that's not how everybody works. But what happens when America says everybody can travel freely if you pay your toll? You just got to pay the U.S. Navy, and then of course we'll let you do whatever you want to do.
No, well, that's kind of how, that's why you don't hear about Panama and the United States taking over the canal anymore, because they renegotiated what the US Navy and the payments and all of that would be. And now Panama's like, all right, got it. It was a lot cheaper to pay off the US military and the Trump administration than it was to try to consider what a public battle over it would be. I don't think Canada is going to go down as easy, or is
Right.
Greenland.
Greenland,
So
right.
yeah, I'd like the purchase of Greenland and just taking that over. It's I think what happens is what we're experiencing right now, and it's a very hard thing to get back. Very hard to get back the moral high ground. And countries, after seeing Trump one, were prepared for a Trump two, and knowing that the United States is not going to stand up with its allies. The United States is not going to work for the mutual defense of any other countries. It's going to be very much about itself, and that self-interest is going to be defined by Trump. That's the part that I think is most challenging. Is the self-interest is not defined by what's best for the vast majority of the American public. Because let's be clear, blanket tariffs on everybody is not what's best for those of us who are still trying to figure out, okay, can I afford to buy a new sofa or not? Right? Or
Right.
actually have to do our own groceries and look at what that bill looks like. So the one day he announces last week that he's going to do 50% tariffs on the European Union starting June 1st. And he's like, all right, well then fine, I'll delay another month because your negotiations aren't going fast enough. Like, it's just, that's I don't think we can say anymore that America is better, and can we be better? Sure. But after a second Trump administration, this is a big piece of the American puzzle and who we are and what we show to the world.
So if, we just celebrated Memorial Day. So,
Mm.
you're thinking about the greatest generation. And on Memorial Day, I like to celebrate not just the people who were in uniform, but the people who sacrificed for American freedom, even if they weren't in uniform. The civil rights workers, the LGBTQ folks who died in pursuit of their rights, the immigrants who have been taken out. Like, all of us have sacrificed and given something to try to get America to live up to the ideals that it has. But
Mhm.
I am haunted after Memorial Day of thinking, wow, so you had these people who joined the military, who fought to make America, to defend American freedom, quote unquote, whatever word it was. And then you end up with Donald Trump, and you end up with, someone who's selling access to the White House overtly, somebody who's not paying attention to court orders if he doesn't have to, somebody who is willing to sell immigration. He wants to
Mhm.
let people buy their way into the country. Did people die for this?
Mm.
Is that what soldiers died for? To have
Mhm.
a Trump America? Is that
Mhm.
what Martin Luther King and civil rights leaders died for, so that we could have a place where we don't actually have diversity and inclusion incentives and people to
Oh,
reach out
well,
and say, hey, can you come on in? Like, did people die for this?
let's rewind. Memorial Day actually started as a post-Civil War celebration and commemoration by Black Americans. It was formerly enslaved people who started celebrating Memorial Day as honoring the Union soldiers who died effectively to end slavery. So and there's this haunting picture that was going on, circulating online, of these children standing up in an organized assembly outside, listening to somebody speak as part of a ceremony on Memorial Day. Every one of those children was a former slave. They'd been enslaved about a
Mm,
year before, right? So that's the origin of Memorial Day. It's very deeply rooted in a sense of what it means to treat people equally in America, and how that did require blood and sacrifice and the loss of life to make sure that we were not a country that enslaved people anymore. And right, so the idea that this is how far Trump has gone
one that
in
honored
this,
one that honored Afrikaners
right?
who have a historical legacy. I don't know these individual people; they could be very different. God bless them. But the community of people who built their wealth by basically
Oppress
creating
oppressing
a
Black people.
segregationist, oppressive
Mhm.
government for decades, generations.
Yes, right. Like that's what's happening around our current Memorial Day. Was was that like we went from the origins of it, which was a commemoration of people losing their lives to make sure people were free, literally that Black people were free, to let's bring in white landowners who have a history, a social history of oppressing Black people. Let's give them special access to the United States. And all while we have a Secretary of Defense who not only is he under investigation, but he's decided that reporters don't need to have access to anything inside of the Pentagon. Like, he doesn't
Mm,
want reporters there to be able to see or hear or talk to anybody. He had some massive restrictions. And I will just remind people, reporters are the reason why we know Vietnam War was not going well. Right?
right.
It is not because of what the military was telling, the Pentagon or the White House was telling us. Reporters went and got the truth about war. Same thing with Afghanistan. Same thing with Iraq. Right? This is the
Weapons of
legacy
mass
of having
destruction.
this, that it didn't. It's the legacy of
Right.
media access and being able to show people, this is what your money, this is what your sacrifice, this is what your wartime experience, this is actually what's really happening with it. So Trump doesn't want any of that. What do they want instead? June 14th military parade.
Yes, Trump's birthday, in fact. Let's
I
have a
know.
military parade that chops up the streets of Washington, D.C. We're going to spend millions of dollars, maybe tens of millions of dollars to repair the streets after we do this homage, this ode to Donald Trump and the militaristic government that he is trying to put in place. Again, that pays very little attention to court orders, that goes after
Mhm.
universities because they don't agree with what it is they're teaching or who it is they're hiring, and that imposes their will even on private companies. I mean, look at what's happening to the attack on Apple. Whether or not they're able to do it constitutionally or not, we don't know. But the idea that the US government will single out individual companies for action, which is supposed to be something you're not supposed to be able to do legislatively. But this country, this government under Donald Trump is willing to.
Jamal, that's our reality, right? We can talk about the ideals of America and how the system is supposed to work, but we have to acknowledge the reality. As you said, we have a president who ignores court orders and has a Congress that's willing to let him get away with that, wants to do a military parade in the streets despite what it's going to do to the actual construction, is at the same time denying that same city a budget to take care of other social services, is selling seats, hundreds of thousands of dollars to get access to him, and the money going directly into his own personal fund. Like what's actually happening for the American public right now? And I'm very curious to hear what do the people who supported Trump feel is happening for them? Is what they feel like happening for them simply that white people are being given precedence when it comes to immigration, when it comes into law enforcement? Like, is that what people are getting from this?
I assume that is what they think that they're getting. What they're going to discover, though, is they won't have Medicaid while they're doing it because the government will take it away. All the benefits that people have that they think go to poor Black and brown people, they find out actually are things that will be taken away from them: Social Security and Medicaid, Medicare, whatever it is. So, I realized this that I think part of it for me, Nayyera, is I think I'm grieving. Right. I think that part of me is sort of grieving the America that we thought we were building, right? One that kind of at the end of the Obama presidency, we thought, oh, like we're really on our way somewhere. We're going to have a country where we do all belong. It does live up to all the ideals that it is that we thought. And then, we had the Trump era, but, Biden came back. And so, okay, maybe that was just a blip. That was just that like kind of a burp, like an American burp. And then we'll go back to the meal that we thought we were all going to have. But then here we are again, and it's even worse than the first time. And so the question for us is, after the grieving is over, then what do? You've got to sort of rebuild another kind of society. And I think that's the place where we're all headed, which is they've ripped everything out, and now we're going to have to build something new, and including what you were talking about with Pete Hegseth, shutting down media attention over at the Department of Defense. And now we find out that perhaps, there's allegations that they were doing wiretaps on aides to try to figure out who the leakers were, which I imagine is behind why they're shutting down media attention.
Yeah.
What happens when these guys are just in charge of all the things and everything it is that we thought we were going to have? Even just as a functioning democracy that doesn't have a big or little brother kind of watching everything, it all goes away. It's just,
well, this is it. Well, this is what happens, right? Like somebody with the power of Secretary of Defense is now totally obsessed with finding leakers who made him look bad publicly. This is what happens is it becomes about the individual and what makes them happy and what keeps their mood stable. And you just hope that around the edges, you're still able to take care of everything else, right? Like, so the people at the Pentagon, I was there last week. People at the Pentagon are largely hoping like, well, maybe while they're focused over here, we can just continue to do our exercises in the South China Sea or elsewhere and make sure that there's military cooperation going and just do the good things that we're supposed to be doing and just hopefully don't get attacked for being misaligned with this anti-leaking investigation, right? It's like that very Soviet era paranoia sets in for everybody who works in the institution. And that it's like, there's reasons why all these scholars are referencing these points of history, whether it's a Soviet era, whether it's like the developing world, is that because we've seen this happen over and over again, and Trump is checking every single box. Now, one person I don't want to lose focus on is Elon Musk, who I guess now just figured out that apparently told a bunch of people that he thought his money would be able to do more. And that he doesn't think that he's going to be doing any more political stuff because it's not worth the investment. Oh, okay. So he's shocked that $1 million didn't buy him an election in Wisconsin. Meanwhile, he wreaked havoc on federal employees, on all of our safety and security systems, including air traffic controllers, food safety, medical safety, all of that stuff, with trying to save money with Doge. And now he's bored and he's moved on. Like he's just done. That's it. So we have 8 months of all this drama and torture and stuff that we have to now fix. And he's just bored and over it. And now he's going to move on because he's a billionaire.
That's right. He's boarding over it. And I think
He
he
he took the
probably,
toy. He thought it was a toy. He broke it, and now he's moved on.
and there are probably some places where he thought he'd get some contracts sole source or be able to sort of take them over, and
Mm-hmm.
they still want to have competitive, at least quote unquote, competitive bidding processes. And so here he is. 'Cause I think at the end of the day, this is all about Starlink and,
Mm-hmm.
Tesla and, all of his companies that, are SpaceX, all the companies that benefit so much from government excess. Like that's the place where he really wants to benefit.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm curious when we find out 6 months from now or a year from now, what was it that Elon Musk tried to get from one of his companies that maybe he didn't get? And that's the reason why he really went negative.
Well, it looks like he got those contracts out of Africa and some in the Middle East for Starlink, but he did get shut out of having direct access to the Chinese government in talking about different security and secret issues like that. That
That's
is
true.
where Hegseth thought he, invited in uh, Elon Musk. He was already there at the Pentagon, was hanging out, and the White House called up and said, "Absolutely, like, why is he there?" And no, he cannot be in that meeting. He cannot be in that
Yep.
meeting. That's not how we're going to do business. And even Trump ended up speaking about it, saying, "Look, businessmen have their lane. It's not working with China." So I guess there's some minimal boundary, but I think that
Well,
effect, essentially, Elon Musk got everything else he wanted. Right? He got the
yeah.
stuff that he wanted. We paid the consequences for it.
Yeah, and my cynical self says the problem is that it was Elon Musk's deal, not Donald Trump's deal, right? Like, I don't think Donald Trump cares whether or not people get
Yeah.
access to information. He seems like he's handing it out. I mean, the Russian
Mm-hmm.
foreign minister showing up in the Oval Office, and they were showing him, classified photos in the first administration, classified information. So I don't know if Trump cares. And the question is whether or not who's the benefactor, right? Who's or
Mm-hmm.
the benefiting party. And so if Trump is the one who's getting the goodies, then I think he'll cut whatever deal he thinks is best. If it's to Elon Musk, then the question is, hey, Trump's like, hey, I already got my money out of you. Like, are you
Mm-hmm.
what are you doing over there? That's not my
Mm-hmm.
deal.
Well, also, I think it was that Trump wasn't the one who got to take credit for it, right? It'd be something Elon
Right.
created on his own. But apparently, he's taking a quote unquote back seat and we don't have to worry about it anymore. But we're not
Mm,
getting the trillions and dollars and cuts that Doge was supposed to give us. We're just getting this drama and craziness. And now somebody else has to fix it up, which is, again, classic for the personality type of that guy or that toddler who just breaks a toy and moves on, and other people have to play cleanup. So yeah, we'll see what kind of cleanup happens at the Pentagon. Do you think Hegseth's gonna last? He's creating a lot of PR headaches for this administration, and PR is what he was supposed to be good at.
he does. And, in normal times, you might wonder, well, what does this mean for a nomination fight, maybe? But in the Trump America, like either they'll just get whoever they want past, the next
Mm-hmm.
Judge Jean Pirro or whatever, or they'll just appoint somebody else like an interim basis, and they'll keep doing that for as long as they
Mm-hmm.
want because they don't really care about the rules. They don't care about necessarily having somebody in place who can really do the job. That's the point. Like, look, some of these people, I wouldn't hire them because I don't agree with them, but like, they can't actually do the job.
The head of the new
But
guy
maybe
in
that's the
charge of
point. Maybe that's a feature, not a bug.
Yep. It's a feature. The guy in charge of Social Security said he had to Google what the Social Security Administration did and why it mattered. And yeah, so much for program that saves our seniors and keeps people out of poverty. But that's can you imagine though that like you or I would get a job where we didn't even know what the job was. I had to look it up
No
after
job.
the fact. After the
No
fact.
job.
There's nobody even listening to
There's
us who's in that position where, right, they give you the job and you're like, I don't know what it's about at all, but I guess I'll figure it out. Must be nice. Must be nice.
must be nice. Nice for them and horrible for the rest of us. And now here we all are trying to figure out how to hold this together. And so we have something to, raise kids in a world where,
Mm,
there's some sort of rules about how this all works. Or maybe we're just going to, have to build these very small independent communities where we try to
mhm.
have things that work for us in states and cities that work, and the rest of the country we just have to live with for a while.
Well, that's, the Trump folks keep talking about states' rights, states' rights. I'm like, all right, states are figuring it out. It's another data point I wanted to share with you, Jamal, that for all of the education needs to have local control. You know that 90% of education is already under local control, that the
Yes.
federal funding is actually just all goes to governors and they get to apportion it and gets sent out. This is all local control everywhere. So when you hear, oh, I need more parental involvement, more local control, no more social emotional learning. We don't need any of that. So get the government out. Like, guys, that's all code for we just want desegregation. We want to teach a certain way of American life to people. The federal government all it does is hand over money to the states when it comes to education.
Yeah, and this idea they have about, paying for private schools, using government money for private
Mm-hmm.
schools and for even private charter schools. We did some work a few years ago with in the Southwest. What they discovered is people were creating private schools or charter schools with, here you go, no English as a second language, no busing, no free and reduced lunch.
But they
Right?
take the
So
public money. But they take the school. They take the
yes.
public money. Mm-hmm.
But they
Mm-hmm.
take the public money. So the whole point is don't send your, Latino immigrant, lower middle class or working class kids over to our school. It's like going back to the days in the South. They created these academies after the the 1954 Supreme Court ruling that desegregated schools. They created these academies to send white kids to so they wouldn't have to go to school with black kids. And now they're just trying to do that same academy approach,
Mm-hmm.
just with public money.
Oh, and add on to that, there's no understanding or accommodation for autism, ADHD,
Right.
any emotional
None of it.
challenges, any of that. They will take public money and kick your kid out of the school. That's it.
Yes.
That's it. Like
Yes.
there's no this idea that education is a public good that everybody in society should have, that we all need. They don't believe in that. The Trump administration doesn't believe in it. I mean, Reagan certainly said that college shouldn't be a public good. Everybody should pay out of out the wazoo for that, and see what that's gotten us with our student loan crisis. But that's the idea. I mean, I watched, of all things, Memorial Day weekend. We watched An American Tale.
Yeah.
There are no cats in America. The streets are paved with cheese, and it really is a stark reminder of how early immigrants and what they had to struggle with, but also tenement life before child labor laws. Like, oh, this is what they want. This is how much of a separation they want in society, because when you don't have access to public education at all levels that is accessible for all people, well, then you get to turn people into factory workers or child labor workers and have them, have just make money for somebody else the rest of their lives.
Yeah, well, good luck
Mm-hmm.
with that. I don't imagine that that's going to work out for anybody because ultimately, the internet and television and people's eyeballs let them know that you have a lot of money over there in your house, in your
Mm-hmm.
neighborhood. And the one thing
Mm-hmm.
I don't think we want is a bunch of people in America deciding that it's better for them to go violently take what you
Yeah.
have than it is as a mob, just not individual
Yeah.
burglars,
I don't
right?
actually want to
But
eat the
go
rich. I
right.
don't actually
But
want to do
people
that.
who decide they want to do that, and then they're like rampaging up and down streets in Georgetown or whatever it is, taking things whatever they want. Which I guess in
Mm-hmm.
some ways we've seen that with some of the shoplifting stuff. But what happens when that becomes the norm, and we all have to
Oh, you
live?
know what
Anybody who's got
happens? That's
money
when they
has
bring
to
out the
live in a place,
military. They don't bring
right?
out
And
just
you
the
got to have
police. That's when they bring out
military.
the military. And it just, right, it's a self-reinforcing cycle for these dictators or these wannabe dictators.
Yeah, we all
Mm-hmm.
and people have to have private security and bulletproof cars as they drive through
Mm-hmm.
places and helicopter patterns because you can't actually land drive your car through the streets of Washington D.C. So you got to take helicopters from wherever you want to go.
It's
We've
every
seen these plays. I
dystopian.
could take you to
We've seen all
countries
the
where this
movies.
exists already.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
already exists. I don't know if
Well,
you
and
know it
then,
here.
then that's what happens, right? According to Trump, then those poor rich people who are getting potentially maybe being targeted and have they just come in quickly to the United States, right? Those Afrikaners, they couldn't
Yeah,
figure out how to
but
make it work as a minority, so they just don't. They just leave. They get whisked away by other rich people.
Lord have mercy. All right. Well,
Lord have
on
mercy.
that note,
On that note, Lord have mercy on everybody.
have mercy on everybody. Happy week, everybody. This was Trailblaze.